What happens when a powerful black CEO is told she doesn't belong in the seat she paid for? What if the woman they tried to erase became the face of a movement? Ariana Cole wasn't looking for a fight when she boarded Flight 980. All she wanted was to return home after securing a major humanitarian deal overseas. But what began as a routine first-class check-in spiraled into a national outrage when she was forcibly removed. No apology, no explanation, just the quiet violence of assumption. Was it a misunderstanding, or was it something far deeper rooted in fear, prejudice, and the discomfort of seeing a black woman in a seat of power? As the truth unravels, one question remains. What happens when the world finally sees what it's tried to ignore for far too long? This is not just a story about one flight. It's about every time someone's dignity was taken quietly, efficiently, and without a trace. Stay with us and discover how one woman's calm refusal to step aside led to the collapse of an entire airline. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's begin. It was 11:58 p.m. when the boarding gate for Falcon Jet Airways Flight 980 called its final group. The airport felt quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that only shows up during red eyes when voices lower out of respect for exhaustion, and everything seems muted by fluorescent lighting and fatigue. But Ariana Cole didn't notice the hush. She walked with the calm confidence of someone who had been through harder things than a long night. She wore a charcoal gray blazer over a cream blouse, loose black slacks, and carried a simple leather tote tucked firmly under her arm. Her curls were pulled back into a clean bun at the nape of her neck, and the only visible jewelry was a silver bracelet engraved with her company's initials, ENS Evernova Systems. The gate agent scanned her boarding pass. It blinked green instantly. "Thank you, Ms. Cole." The agent smiled. "You're all set. First class, seat 2A. Ariana nodded softly. "Appreciate it." She didn't make small talk. Not tonight. This wasn't a vacation, nor a business pitch. It was something far more personal. She had work to do, real work that mattered. And it started the moment she landed in Cape Town. As she entered the cabin, her eyes skimmed the interior with a measured glance. The scent of leather, citrus cleaner, and faint cologne hung in the air. First class wasn't crowded. A few passengers were already settled, flipping through safety cards or dozing beneath eye masks. She placed her tote in the overhead bin, took her seat by the window, and exhaled. Her fingers instinctively brushed the bracelet on her wrist. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. Then, a voice. "Excuse me, miss." It was sharp, not rude, not loud, but edged with suspicion. The kind of voice you remember because it wants to remind you of something you're not supposed to forget. Ariana turned her head slowly. Standing in the aisle was a woman in her mid-40s, with pressed blonde hair, a pristine Falcon Jet uniform, and a name tag that read Michelle Sanders, lead flight attendant. Her posture was stiff, eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Yes," Ariana replied, keeping her voice neutral. "I believe you may be in the wrong seat," Michelle said, already holding a passenger manifest in her hand. "I don't think so," Ariana said. She reached into her pocket and offered her boarding pass again. "Seat 2A. Scanned at the gate. I'm a platinum member." Michelle looked at the pass, barely glancing before tilting her head. There must be a mistake. This seat was flagged for VIP reservation. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to step out while we sort this. Behind Ariana, A man shifted. He was sitting in 2B, a white man, mid-30s, navy pinstripe suit, gold cufflinks, and the kind of smirk that doesn't fade unless someone makes it. His name, Ariana would later learn, was Bryce Halston, partner at a New York hedge fund. But right now, he was just a spectator enjoying the show. Ariana gave Michelle a quiet smile. "I believe the scanner confirmed it," she said, "and the gate agent had no issue." "Yes. Well," Michelle tapped her manifest, "there's a discrepancy on our end." There it was again, that word, discrepancy, a prettier version of doubt, served with just enough politeness to deny liability, but not enough to mask condescension. "I'd appreciate it," Ariana said evenly, "if you check the system again." Michelle nodded, lips tightening, but she didn't walk away. She turned instead toward Bryce. "I'm so sorry for the delay. Mr. Halston," she said, her tone changing entirely warmer, almost apologetic. "We'll clear this up quickly." He chuckled softly, not bothering to hide his pleasure. "No trouble at all. These things happen." Ariana's gaze flicked between them. She didn't miss the slight exchange how Bryce subtly adjusted his cufflinks, sliding something under his palm into Michelle's. A whisper of green paper, folded tightly. Her eyes narrowed. Michelle turned back to Ariana. "Actually," she said, "this pass looks off. I'll need to take it." Ariana hesitated. "This ticket was printed from the Falcon Jet app, synced with my account. You can verify that." Michelle didn't respond. She reached forward and, without asking, took the boarding pass from Ariana's hand. Then, in one swift motion, she tore it in half. The sound was soft, but in the silence of the cabin it was sharp enough to sting. Several passengers looked up. Ariana's hands rested on her lap. She did not reach out. She did not protest. Inside, a slow burn had begun, but outside, her posture remained a sculpture. Michelle said, with finality, "We can't allow counterfeit tickets in first class. I'm going to have you moved to economy until we verify." From the seat behind her, someone whispered, "Wait." "What?" Across the aisle, a woman in 3C, a white woman in her late 50s named Eleanor Briggs, leaned forward. "She boarded before me," Eleanor said. "That was her seat. I saw it." Michelle ignored the comment. Her eyes never left Ariana's. Ariana inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. Michelle tilted her head. "I'm following protocol." A pause. Then Ariana asked, or following instructions, Michelle blinked. Bryce leaned back in his seat, crossed his arms, and said softly to no one in particular, "I was told 2A was reserved for VIPs. Guess some folks still think status is printable." It wasn't the words. It was the tone, the suggestion behind it. The idea that Ariana Cole didn't just sit in a seat she didn't earn, but that she pretended to belong there. Ariana didn't speak again. She reached down and slowly picked up her tote from under the seat. But she didn't move. Not yet. Not until the truth had a moment to sit with everyone else. In the row behind her, someone took out a phone and began to record quietly. Zara Patel, the junior flight attendant standing further down the cabin, glanced between Michelle and Ariana with visible discomfort. She opened her tablet, brows furrowed. Ariana glanced out the window. Her reflection stared back, faint and flickering. "I boarded this flight to change lives in Cape Town," she murmured to herself. "But I didn't expect the first one would be mine." The plane hadn't even left the gate, and already the balance of power was shifting quietly, but irreversibly. The cabin lights dimmed, casting a soft amber glow across the rows of sleek leather seats. The air inside Falcon Jet Airways Flight 980 was cold, not from the air conditioning, but from something else, a tension that hadn't been there moments earlier. Not until Ariana Cole had her boarding pass torn in two like it meant nothing. She hadn't moved yet. Still seated in 2A, her hands rested on her lap. Her tote sat just beneath her feet, untouched. Her breath was steady, controlled, but inside, her thoughts were far from calm. She could feel the weight of 100 unspoken questions in the air around her. The ones passengers didn't ask but thought anyway. Was she really supposed to be in that seat? Did she sneak in? Was this about a mistake? Or something else? Ariana had seen it before in boardrooms, at investor meetings, at corporate retreats. The look that said, "Prove you belong." And each time she had, again and again. But the exhaustion of it, the constant proving, never really left her. She looked down at her bracelet, running her thumb across the letters E.N.S., the initials of the company she'd built from her garage in Tacoma, Evernova Systems. She had launched it with nothing but a graduate fellowship, a second-hand laptop, and an idea about clean tech that no one believed in until it was profitable. Now, 15 years later, her company employed over 900 people. Her tech-powered sustainability initiatives on 4 continents. Her nonprofit trained young women in robotics and green energy, especially in communities that had never seen investment before. Still, none of that had shielded her from what had just happened. Outside the plane, through the oval window, the tarmac glowed under massive industrial lights. Ariana stared into the night, letting her mind drift thousands of miles ahead to Cape Town. She wasn't flying for a media appearance or a product launch. This wasn't a PR trip. She was heading to break ground on a new learning center in Khayelitsha, a township often forgotten in policy discussions. The center was named after her mother, Gloria Cole, who had spent most of her life as a school cafeteria worker and community volunteer. Ariana had promised her long before she became Dr. Cole, long before Forbes, and long before private flights that she would build something lasting in her name. A place where girls who looked like them didn't have to ask permission to learn. She had come so far. So why did she feel like she was back at the starting line in the aisle? Michelle Sanders stood quietly near the cockpit. Her arms folded as she spoke in hushed tones to someone over the crew comms. Every now and then, her eyes darted toward Ariana, but she didn't return the gaze. Ariana wasn't interested in power plays. What she wanted was space, dignity, a seat. Zara Patel, the junior flight attendant, lingered nearby, fingers gripping her tablet just a little too tightly. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. Her eyes flicked between Ariana and Michelle, uncertain. Ariana caught her glance for a moment. There was something in it, sympathy maybe, or shame, but Ariana didn't want pity. She wanted the truth. She leaned back into the seat that was supposedly not hers and closed her eyes for a second. She could feel the beginning of the headache creeping behind her temples. Not from jet lag, from restraint, because she had options. She could call her lawyer, Devin Marcus, and within minutes, someone at Falcon Jet's board would answer their private line. She could call Lena Cruz, her assistant, who was likely still awake managing logistics for the press team in Cape Town. But something in her resisted. Not yet. Not while they were still digging their own hole. Her mother used to say, "Let them write the lie on paper. then show them the truth in ink. She opened her eyes. Across the aisle, Eleanor Briggs looked over again. "You okay?" she whispered, leaning slightly into the aisle. Ariana gave a nod, small and grateful. "That was uncalled for," Eleanor said. "I saw you bored. That seat's yours." "Thank you," Ariana said softly. "It means a lot that you said that out loud." Eleanor glanced toward the front. "Some of us are tired of watching this kind of thing happen in silence." Ariana almost smiled. Almost. Then Bryce Halston let out a loud sigh and looked up from his phone. "Honestly, this whole thing is disruptive. If she wasn't meant to sit there, just move her. There's protocol for a reason." He didn't even try to whisper. Michelle turned and nodded, as though his words held more weight than truth. Zara's hand hovered over her screen, hesitating. Ariana caught it. "Something wrong?" she asked gently. Zara startled. "No, I'm just checking. I double-checked the manifest earlier. Your name was there. I swear it was. But now..." Ariana tilted her head. But now Zara lowered her voice. "Now it says unverified. I didn't see that before." Ariana's brows furrowed. "Did someone update the file? I don't know, but the timestamp's recent." Ariana straightened slowly in her seat. That wasn't just a mistake. That was an active alteration. She looked toward the cockpit, where Michelle was now gesturing subtly toward the flight phone. The cabin intercom crackled briefly and then cut off. Something was happening behind the curtain. Her instincts, well honed from years of corporate boardroom traps, told her the setup had just begun. Bryce leaned slightly toward Michelle and murmured something with a smirk. She gave a tight nod. Ariana took a deep breath. Her voice remained soft, steady. "I suggest someone check the gate logs." The scanner flashed green. "That's a system verification." Michelle didn't respond, but her jaw tightened. "You can tell a lot," Ariana said, her voice almost conversational, "by how people treat you when they think no one will hold them accountable." The air shifted again. A quiet unease settled in the space between rows. Eleanor pulled out her phone and opened the video camera. Zara looked down, whispering, "They're going to try and make you leave." "I know," Ariana said. A beat of silence. "Are you scared?" Zara asked, honest and trembling. Ariana turned to her. "No," she said. "I've spent my whole life being told I don't belong. I stopped being scared when I realized they were wrong." Zara's eyes widened, and just like that, something inside her clicked. A line had been drawn, one she would no longer step back from. Michelle returned down the aisle, her heels clicking with finality. "We've flagged a manifest error," she announced to the front cabin. "Passenger 2A will be temporarily relocated while we address the discrepancy." Ariana didn't move. The only thing that shifted was the tone in the room. Not fear, but anticipation. The kind that precedes a reckoning. And this flight wasn't even in the air yet. For a moment, the aisle was silent. Everyone in first class had heard the announcement. Michelle Sanders's voice carried enough authority to sound official and enough edge to make it personal. Ariana Cole sat unmoving in seat 2A, her legs crossed, hands resting lightly on her lap. She looked like a woman waiting for her coffee, not a woman about to be forcefully removed from a seat she paid for. But deep inside, something sharp stirred. Not fear, not even anger. It was something older, heavier, recognition. She had felt it as a girl in middle school when a substitute teacher demanded proof she belonged in the gifted class. She felt it again when her patent application was flagged for additional scrutiny because someone assumed she hadn't written the tech herself. And now, she felt it here 30,000 feet away from where she came from, and still, somehow, right back inside the same question. Do you belong? Zara Patel stepped quietly to the side of the cabin. She had no instructions yet, but the look on her face said everything. Her fingers hovered over her tablet again, watching the manifest update flash briefly. Passenger 2A. Status unverified. Flagged monitor closely. Zara had checked that file before boarding. Ariana's name had been listed properly then. The flag wasn't just inaccurate, it was new, and whoever placed it did so after Ariana sat down. Zara's throat tightened. She looked toward Michelle, who was approaching with a clipboard and that same rehearsed smile she wore earlier. Ms. Cole, Michelle said, standing over Ariana, I'm going to need you to collect your things now. Ariana looked up slowly. My things are already in place, she said calmly, and so am I. Michelle's smile thinned. The manifest has a discrepancy. You've been flagged for review. Ariana's voice didn't waver. You flagged me. I watched you walk away with my boarding pass. I watched you tear it. And now the record suddenly says, I'm not who I am. Bryce Halston shifted in his seat, sighing with performative boredom. This is taking forever, he muttered. Can someone just put her in the right seat so we can take off? Eleanor Briggs stood. She hadn't meant to, but her body moved before her mind could catch up. She was here before you. Eleanor said to Bryce, I saw her board. That seat was scanned green. Michelle turned to Eleanor. Ma'am, I'll ask you to remain seated. We're handling it. You're not handling anything, Eleanor replied. You're escalating. Zara stepped forward now. Her voice was soft, but it didn't shake. Her name was on the manifest an hour ago, she said. It was verified at boarding. Something changed after that. Michelle didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out a printed manifest copy and tapped it with her pen. This version is the one that matters, she said. And who printed it? Ariana asked. Michelle glanced down. Crew documentation. Ariana nodded slowly. So, you removed me from the system, then used the absence as evidence of a problem you created? Ma'am, I'm not going to debate this with you. I'm not debating, Ariana said. I'm documenting. She pulled out her phone, unlocking it with a slow, deliberate motion. The screen reflected against her glasses. She tapped a voice memo app, not live, not yet, but ready. Michelle's eyes narrowed. I'm giving you a final warning. Move to coach or we'll contact airport security. You've already made your choice, Ariana said, standing slowly. You think you've cornered me, but you've cornered yourself. Michelle opened her mouth to reply, but she was cut off by a familiar voice overhead. The pilot, Captain Miles Brent, broke in over the intercom. Michelle, if you can't resolve the issue, have Officer Nolan intervene. A ripple moved through the cabin. There was that word again. Officer. Zara stiffened. She glanced toward the front bulkhead, where the security officer assigned to this flight, Craig Nolan, was already stepping into the aisle. He had the build of a retired Marine and the demeanor of a man used to being obeyed. He paused next to Michelle, who whispered something in his ear. Craig nodded once and turned to Ariana. Ma'am, we've had multiple complaints. I need you to step aside. Ariana looked him over, then back at Michelle, then toward Bryce. Complaints from whom she asked. Bryce lifted a finger from his coffee. She made a scene, he said lazily, argued with the crew, made everyone uncomfortable. Zara's hands clenched. Eleanor's jaw dropped. She didn't raise her voice once. Eleanor said, "We all saw it. The only one making people uncomfortable is him." Michelle snapped her head around. "This isn't about him. This is about procedure." "No," Ariana said. "This is about power. Yours, his, and how fragile it must be if my presence in this seat threatens it." Craig took a step closer. "Ma'am, your cooperation." Ariana reached for her tote, slowly, carefully. "I've cooperated," she said. "I've answered your questions. I've offered my ticket. I've sat silently while you erased me from your records. What I haven't done is surrendered." Craig's expression faltered. He wasn't used to people like her. People who didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't panic, just stood still like a fault line under pressure. "I'm not resisting," Ariana continued, "but I am remembering, and so is everyone here." Around the cabin, phones were lifted discreetly, not everyone recording, but many watching. The mood had shifted. What began as confusion was hardening into doubt. Bryce leaned back, looking suddenly uneasy. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "She's just trying to make a scene." "No," Eleanor said. "She's trying not to vanish." Zara, who had disappeared briefly into the galley, now returned, holding her tablet. "I found the timestamp," she said quickly to Michelle. "The manifest flag was entered 8 minutes ago, just after you tore her pass." Michelle froze. "Excuse me, it wasn't in the record before." Zara continued. "You added it." Michelle's voice dropped. "You're out of line." Zara didn't back down. "You falsified documentation. That's an FAA violation." Craig looked from Zara to Michelle, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I need to verify this," he said. Eleanor stood straighter. "She's telling the truth." Ariana looked at Michelle now. Her tone had not changed. "If you had just asked questions, we wouldn't be here. But you didn't. You made a decision, then rewrote the facts to support it." Michelle stepped back, visibly flustered. Bryce stood, as if to regain some control. "This whole thing is ridiculous. I paid for peace and got dragged into drama." Ariana looked at him, for the first time holding his gaze. "You paid for distance," she said, "not dominance." Silence again. Craig tapped his earpiece. "Captain, we need to delay pushback. Situation is still active." The intercom remained silent. Then Ariana said something that made Zara's breath catch. "Let it all play out," she said, "because the next part isn't quiet." Her phone was still in her hand, still recording. The plane had not moved, but the cabin had. Emotionally, morally, legally, there was no turbulence in the sky yet. But it had arrived inside the aircraft, and the crash wouldn't come from above. It would come from within. There are moments on airplanes when time slows down, not because of turbulence, not because of delay, but because something unnatural begins to fill the cabin air. That moment had arrived. Officer Craig Nolan remained in the aisle, flanked by lead flight attendant Michelle Sanders. Passengers were no longer just passengers. They were observers, some filming discreetly, others watching with a kind of tension that belonged more in courtrooms than aircraft. Ariana Cole was still standing near seat 2A, her body calm but alert, her phone recording in her hand. Then the accusation came. "She took my phone." Bryce Halston said loudly enough for the first 4 rows to hear. He stood, holding out his hand as though proving its emptiness. It was right here in the divider tray, and now it's gone. Gasps broke the hush. Michelle responded instantly. "Miss Cole, we need to check your belongings immediately." Ariana didn't move. She blinked once, slowly. "Are you accusing me of theft?" Now Bryce nodded toward Craig. She reached under while I adjusted my seat. I saw her take it. She slipped it into her bag. Craig looked at Ariana. "Ma'am, please cooperate." The lie was so brazen, so amateur, that Ariana almost laughed. But she didn't. She had too much experience in spaces like this to be surprised by the escalation. She pulled her tote bag gently from beneath the seat and placed it on the tray table in front of her. "You're welcome to look." Zara Patel stepped forward before Craig could move. "This isn't right," she said, voice trembling. "I've been watching her since she boarded. She never touched anything near his seat." Michelle snapped her head around. "Zara, please stay in your lane." Zara stepped back, not out of submission but out of strategic pause. Craig reached for the bag. Ariana held it open, pulling out items slowly and clearly. Phone, charger, wallet, passport, a folded itinerary, a paperback novel, keys. That was it. "No phone," she said quietly, "except mine." Craig stared. He could feel the air shifting again. A beat passed. He looked toward Michelle for direction. Michelle's voice cracked slightly. "Check under her seat. Maybe she dropped it, or stashed it." Bryce leaned forward with exaggerated sincerity. "She's playing you. I saw her reach. Just check around." Ariana stared at him. Her tone was even, but every syllable carried the weight of long memory. "You're building lies on top of lies," she said. "And when this collapses, and it will, I hope you remember how easily you weaponized your privilege." "Excuse me," Bryce scoffed. "I'm the victim here." "No," said Eleanor Briggs from across the aisle, rising halfway from her seat. "You're the manipulator." A few murmurs echoed behind her. "She never touched your phone," Eleanor said. "I saw you scrolling while she boarded. You were texting someone. I remember because you were complaining out loud about seat sharing with randos." Zara nodded. "It's true. I remember that too." Michelle tried again. "This is a routine check." "No, it's not," Ariana said, her voice low, firm. "It's a routine assumption. And there's a difference." Craig stepped back slightly. His shoulders stiffened. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Passengers were watching him, filming him. He could feel the judgment like heat on the back of his neck. Zara looked at Ariana, then turned toward Michelle. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "I saw Mr. Halston slide something into your palm earlier, right before you questioned her boarding pass. I wasn't sure at first, but now I am. It was money." Michelle's face turned pale. "Are you suggesting I'm reporting it?" Zara said. "To HQ? To the FAA if I have to?" Eleanor folded her arms. "And I'll testify." Bryce waved a hand. "This is ridiculous. You people are trying to gang up on me." "You people," Ariana repeated, eyes narrowing. Bryce flinched. Eleanor stood fully now. "You've said enough." Zara turned to Craig again. "She showed you everything in her bag. There's no phone, no theft. This is targeted harassment, and I won't be a part of it." Michelle looked between them, calculating. Her authority was crumbling, and she knew it. Ariana remained calm, but inside, her mind was running, not in panic, but in precision. Every face, every word, every lie. She was cataloging them all. She looked at Craig again. "You were brought here under the assumption of protocol," she said. "Now you've seen the truth. The only question left is, do you continue enforcing a lie?" Craig didn't answer. Not yet. Michelle straightened. "We still have a manifest discrepancy. We still have procedural concerns," Eleanor snapped. "You still have no proof." Bryce looked furious now. "She thinks just because she's in a blazer and quiet, she can act like royalty." Zara's voice broke in. "And just because you're in a suit and white, you think you decide who belongs where?" That silenced the entire cabin. Ariana looked around the aisle. Cameras were up, phones were recording, the story was no longer private. Craig stepped back. "I'm not going to remove anyone at this moment." Michelle's eyes widened. "What we need to clarify some things," he said. "I'll clarify." Zara said, "You falsified her manifest status. You tore her ticket, and now you accused her of theft without evidence. That's 3 violations." Michelle's voice dropped. "Watch yourself." "No," Zara said, louder this time. "Watch yourself." In the galley. A buzz of conversation began among other crew members. The tension had spilled into every corner of the plane. Ariana sat back down in 2A. She didn't cross her legs this time. She placed her phone on the armrest and looked forward, unblinking. She wasn't afraid. She was waiting, not for their permission, but for their collapse. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about the cracks that had been hiding in plain sight, and they had just started to split wide open. The cabin had turned into a quiet theater. Everyone was still in their seats, but no one was relaxed anymore. The energy wasn't boredom or impatience, it was charged, expectant. Something had shifted. Ariana Cole sat upright in seat 2A. Not stiffly, not performatively. She simply was, composed, steady, unmovable. She glanced once toward the overhead bin, but made no move to reach it. Her phone remained on the armrest. Screen still lit. She had stopped recording minutes ago. She didn't need to anymore. Now, others were recording for her. She could feel it something in the air that said the moment hadn't arrived yet, but it was close. Across the aisle, Eleanor Briggs hadn't sat back down. She stood with her hand on her seat back, watching Bryce Halston as if daring him to lie again. Bryce looked out the window now, arms folded, jaw clenched. His earlier smugness had curdled into discomfort. Michelle Sanders paced near the galley, tapping her tablet with short and frustrated jabs. Her voice, when she spoke into her headset, was lower now, sharper, controlled, but barely. Zara Patel stood near the forward exit, arms crossed, trying to look like she belonged there, but her eyes betrayed her nerves. She had crossed a line, and she knew it, but she wasn't backing up. Ariana didn't look at any of them. She was watching the reflection in the dark oval window. Outside, the tarmac lights cast a dim shimmer. In the glass, she saw herself, not as others saw her, as she really was, not the version reduced to a seat number or a suspicion. The woman who had built something from nothing, endured every ceiling and crack, and come out clean. She had been calm through worse than this. In fact, the silence reminded her of something one of the worst days of her life. It had been a boardroom 6 years ago, a panel of investors, all men, all white, who interrupted her 7 times in her opening statement. One had asked, "So, who actually wrote the algorithm?" Another said, "Your passion's admirable, but do you have someone technical on your team?" They hadn't read her resume, MIT, National Science Foundation Fellow. 3 published papers on renewable microgrid systems. She had smiled. She always smiled back then. Now she understood better. The real threat had never been her ambition. It was her presence. And here, in seat 2A, presence was all she had left. Craig Nolan, the onboard security officer, stood near the cockpit, his earpiece catching snippets of instructions, but he hadn't moved since Ariana emptied her bag in front of him. There had been no theft, no disruption, only the tension between what they expected and what stood before them. Eleanor finally sat, folding her arms. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Ariana turned to her. "We wait. For what? For them to decide how far they're willing to fall." Zara approached, tablet in hand. Her voice was low, meant only for Ariana and Eleanor. "They're calling back to the gate," she said, "trying to find a way to deboard you without triggering a report." Ariana raised an eyebrow. "Is that even possible?" "No," Zara said. "Not without writing something official. But they're hoping if you agree, it won't count as removal." "I won't agree," Ariana said simply. Zara looked nervous. "Then it's going to escalate." "Good," Ariana replied. "Sometimes things need to—" Michelle re-entered the cabin, her posture tighter now. She walked past without looking at anyone, but her voice rang out as she passed Ariana. "Just remember, Ms. Cole, we offered you a peaceful solution." Ariana looked up at her with a kind of quiet that only deep self-respect can hold. "No," she said. "You offered me a quiet erasure. That's not the same." Michelle stopped for a second, then kept walking. The intercom beeped. "This is Captain Miles Brent. Due to an internal procedural review, we are currently delayed on the tarmac. We appreciate your patience." There was a pause, just long enough for meaning to fill the silence. "We'll be underway shortly." Someone in 4A groaned. A woman in 3D whispered, "This is absurd." But no one looked at Ariana as if she were the cause. That shift had already begun. Craig finally walked back down the aisle, stopping beside her seat. "Ms. Cole," he said, "we're trying to de-escalate." "I understand," Ariana replied. "But if you want me to leave, you'll need to provide a legal reason, because you have none. There was a manifest error. There was a manifest alteration." Craig hesitated. "You're not making this easy." Ariana tilted her head. "That's the thing about dignity. It's never easy for the people who try to take it." Zara was watching now, her fingers shaking. Bryce stood again, frustrated. "I don't see why we're still talking about this. Can someone just escort her out? She doesn't belong in this seat. It's for business travelers." Ariana's eyes locked with his. "You mean white travelers?" He flushed. "I didn't say that, but you thought it." Eleanor turned sharply. "She is a business traveler, you moron. She probably earns more in 1 quarter than you do in a year." Bryce glared. "You don't know who I am." "I don't need to," Eleanor said. "Your actions are louder than your resume." A laugh came from someone in row 1. A woman in 1C smirked and pulled out her phone. "This is going viral," she whispered. Michelle stepped into the aisle again. "Phones down, everyone. Filming isn't allowed on board." Zara cleared her throat. "Actually, FAA guidelines permit filming in public areas of aircraft unless it interferes with operations. This doesn't." Michelle turned slowly to look at her. "Excuse me, I checked during training," Zara said. "I remember because it surprised me." Michelle stared at her, then glanced at Craig, who didn't offer any support. Ariana sat, watching the scene unfold around her like a chessboard she already understood. Every move they made tightened the noose around their own narrative. Every denial was being captured, every inconsistency documented. She picked up her phone and opened her contact list. Her thumb hovered over Devin Marcus. She didn't press it. Not yet. Let them write one more lie. Just one more. Eleanor leaned over slightly. You waitin' for the right time? Ariana nodded. I always do. Zara returned to the galley. Her heart pounded, but her hands had stopped shaking. She wasn't the same girl who stood silent during orientation, unsure if she belonged in a uniform like this. She had crossed the line, and now she couldn't go back. The cabin sat in a tense stillness, like the air just before a thunderstorm. Ariana looked out the window one last time, not for escape, not for relief, but for confirmation. She was still here, still seated, and no amount of silence could erase that. The quiet that had settled over the cabin wasn't peaceful. It was charged, volatile, the kind of silence that doesn't last. It had weight to it like the air before a lightning strike. Ariana Cole sat perfectly still in seat 2A, her back straight, her phone resting in her hand. She wasn't recording anymore. The story had moved beyond her now. It had become communal. In every row, someone was watching, whispering, filming, wondering. She was no longer just a black woman in the wrong seat. She had become something else, a mirror. Everyone could now see who they really were. Eleanor Briggs kept glancing at Ariana, checking on her like a concerned neighbor. And yet, there was something more there. Admiration, perhaps, a quiet awe. Most people, Eleanor thought, would have shouted by now, snapped, broken, but Ariana didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence was louder than any outburst. Zara Patel stood just outside the curtain dividing the galley from first class. Her tablet was clutched tightly to her chest, but she wasn't hiding anymore. Her expression had shifted from anxious to resolved. The truth was no longer a secret. It had been spoken, and now it was taken root. Michelle Sanders returned to the cabin once again. Her stride had lost some of its confidence, but not all of it. Not yet. She approached Ariana's seat with calculated calm. "Ms. Cole," she said, "we've done our best to handle this professionally, but your continued resistance is creating unnecessary conflict. We're asking you one final time to voluntarily relocate before this becomes a more serious issue." Ariana didn't look up right away. She was watching the light blink above the seat across the aisle. The fastened seatbelt sign was still on, even though the plane hadn't moved in nearly 40 minutes. She looked up slowly. "My presence in this seat isn't the conflict," she said. "It's your reaction to it that is." Michelle's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't personal." "No," Ariana said. "It's systemic, and that's worse." Michelle looked like she wanted to speak again, but nothing came out. She turned and walked a few steps away, regrouping by the bulkhead. Bryce Halston sighed loudly again. He had been checking his watch, fidgeting with his cufflinks, and looking increasingly agitated. "I paid a fortune for this ticket," he muttered, "to no one in particular. Some of us have real places to be." Zara stepped back into the cabin. "She does too," she said. Bryce gave her a sarcastic smile. "What is she? A motivational speaker?" Ariana responded before Zara could. "No, I'm the founder of Evernova Systems. Our carbon-neutral microgrid design powers over 1,200 rural health clinics globally. We're launching an education hub for orphaned girls in Khayelitsha tomorrow. The cabin went very still. Bryce blinked. "You're joking." "I rarely do," Ariana said, her voice like glass, calm, clear, and cutting. Michelle, having heard every word, looked shaken. Eleanor leaned forward again. "So, let's be clear. The woman you tore a ticket from and called a liar is a tech CEO flying to South Africa for a philanthropic mission. And your defense is, she doesn't look the part." Bryce shook his head. "I never said that." "You didn't have to," Eleanor snapped. Zara stepped forward. The manifest was manipulated. "The only reason this is still happening is because no one here has the courage to admit they were wrong." Michelle spun toward her. "Enough." "No," Zara said. "It's not enough. Not until someone tells the truth." Craig Nolan appeared again from the cockpit. His expression was strained. Sweat had formed at his temple. "Captain Brent wants the situation resolved now. We're already in violation of our scheduled takeoff." Resolved how Eleanor asked. By removing the person you wrongfully targeted, Craig looked between them. "The decision is above me now." Zara raised her tablet. "Then maybe show the captain what's on this screen. Time-stamped edits, unauthorized entries, every lie, logged." Michelle reached for the tablet. "Give that to me." Zara stepped back. "No, you don't get to control the evidence, too." Passengers behind them stirred. Someone said quietly, "This is insane." Another, "Why is she still being harassed?" Ariana stood, not abruptly, not in anger. She rose like a tree, slowly unfolding its branches. Everyone watched. "Let me explain something to you," she said, facing Michelle, Bryce, and Craig all at once. "This seat, this space, this treatment, it's not new. I've seen it before in different rooms, different cities, in front of different people who thought their title gave them the right to question mine." Her voice never rose. It didn't have to. "But there's a difference now," she said. "You're not alone in this cabin anymore, and neither am I." She turned toward Zara. "You risked your job to tell the truth." She turned to Eleanor. "You used your voice when silence would have been safer." And then she turned to the rows behind her. "And all of you, you saw it, you're seeing it. That's what changes things. Not yelling, not force, but witnessing, refusing to look away." Craig looked down. Michelle said nothing. Bryce was pale now, sweating. Then, quietly, a man in seat 1B stood up. He had said nothing until now. He was older, possibly in his late 60s, dressed in a conservative gray sweater and slacks. White, quiet, the kind of man who people usually deferred to without question. "If she's removed," he said, "I'm not flying." Michelle turned. "Sir, this isn't—" "I'm not asking," he said. "I'm telling." A beat later, a woman in 3C stood. "Me too." Someone else. 2D. Same here. Row by row, one by one, passengers began raising their hands or standing. Some held up phones, others just stared straight ahead, but the message was clear. Ariana watched it unfold, quiet as ever. Zara clutched the tablet tighter, tears welling but unshed. This wasn't the end, but it was the turning point. And Ariana, still standing in the middle of it, finally allowed herself to take a full breath. She had never needed to raise her voice, because Justice had learned how to speak for her. From the outside, Falcon Jet Flight 980 looked like any other aircraft preparing for takeoff. The cabin lights glowed softly through the oval windows, and the luggage carts had already been cleared. But inside the aircraft, it was anything but routine. Inside that sealed, pressurized tube, something irreversible had taken place. Ariana Cole remained standing in front of seat 2A, her hands loosely folded in front of her. The cabin was quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet from earlier. This one was heavy with awareness, with defiance, with truth. She glanced at the man in 1B, the one who had stood up in solidarity. She didn't know his name, but she didn't need to. His act had said enough. Eleanor Briggs sat back down, her eyes glistening. Zara Patel still stood near the galley, the tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. She looked like a soldier who had decided to disobey a corrupt order and was bracing for the consequence. Michelle Sanders was visibly unraveling. She stood near the curtain separating first class, whispering harshly into her headset, trying to contain the situation, to spin it somehow. But it was beyond containment. Every word spoken now would echo outside this cabin, every gesture, recorded, every lie, soon to collapse. Bryce Halston, the man who had tried to escalate things with false accusations, had sunk low in his seat. The room no longer responded to him the way it had at the beginning. The confidence he carried had vanished. Without Michelle's authority to hide behind, he was just a man who'd lied and had been caught. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Brent. We are currently experiencing a delay due to a passenger manifest audit and have requested ground control to return to gate position." A murmur spread through the cabin. "Return to the gate." Ariana raised an eyebrow. Michelle turned back to the passengers. "This is purely procedural," she said quickly, though her voice trembled. "Please remain seated." Craig Nolan, the onboard security officer, stood a few steps behind Michelle. He hadn't said anything in several minutes. His face no longer carried authority. It carried something closer to regret. Ariana addressed him directly. "Craig, do you understand what's happening here?" He hesitated. "I think I do now." "I hope so," Ariana replied, "because this moment will be replayed more times than you can count." He looked down at his hands. "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered. "No," Ariana said, "but now you're in it." Zara stepped forward. "There's something else you should know," she said to Ariana. "After I spoke up, the senior crew started whispering about locking down the cabin before you could deboard. I heard them say you were agitated and unstable." Ariana nodded slowly. "They're preparing the language for the report. They want to twist the story." Zara looked around, visibly shaken. "But you haven't even raised your voice. That's what scares them," Eleanor said quietly from her seat. "She doesn't need to scream to be powerful." The cabin tilted slightly as the plane began to taxi slowly away from the runway and back toward the gate. Passengers shifted. Some whispered. Others kept their phones recording, unmoved. Ariana sat down again, still poised, still unbothered on the surface. But beneath that, her thoughts raced. She could already picture the headlines. Black CEO removed from first class in boarding dispute. Prominent philanthropist questioned an airline mix-up. But she had a voice too. And this time, she wasn't going to let them own the narrative. She turned to Zara. "When we land, you'll need to write a report. Do it honestly. Put your name on the truth." Zara nodded, swallowing hard. "I will." Eleanor chimed in. "So will I." Others in the cabin began to nod as well, quietly affirming. Michelle tried again. "This return to gate doesn't mean anything. It's standard." Ariana stood again. "No," she said calmly. "It means the illusion is breaking." Michelle blinked. "Excuse me. It means people no longer trust your version of the story, and that's how change begins, not with yelling or slogans, but with doubt. Doubt in the way things have always been done." Michelle didn't respond. She couldn't. The cabin door opened 20 minutes later. 2 ground security personnel boarded. Their eyes scanned the room. One held a clipboard. The other looked straight at Ariana. "Dr. Cole." "Yes. Would you come with us?" She didn't flinch. "Am I under arrest?" "No," the agent replied, his voice lower. "We were told to escort you off the aircraft for re-verification." Ariana looked around the cabin, then at her tote bag. She moved slowly, gathering her belongings, giving the passengers time to take it in. "This is not the end," she said softly. The man from 1B stood again. "If she leaves, I leave." Eleanor stood. "Me too." Zara followed. "I'll walk out with her." And then something extraordinary happened. More than half the cabin stood, not everyone, but enough to be seen, enough to matter. Michelle shouted, "Everyone, please remain seated. This flight cannot depart until," but no one listened anymore. The illusion of control had evaporated. Ariana stepped into the aisle, not alone, never again alone. And with every step she took toward that door, the cracks in Falcon Jet widened. What had started as a simple seat assignment dispute had become a symbol of bias, of silencing, of dignity reclaimed. As the door closed behind her and the cool air of the jet bridge hit her face, Ariana knew something had already begun unraveling. She didn't have to collapse the airline. It was doing it to itself. All she did was stand her ground. The terminal was colder than Ariana Cole expected. After the tension and heat inside that plane, the sudden blast of recycled air stung her cheeks. She stood just outside the jet bridge in the narrow hallway reserved for security concerns, flanked by 2 uniformed ground agents who hadn't spoken more than a few words since escorting her off the aircraft. She wasn't cuffed. She wasn't restrained, but it still felt like detainment. She adjusted the strap on her tote bag and took a slow breath. Her heart was steady, but her mind was racing not with panic, but with strategy. She knew how things worked in systems like this. She knew what happened next: plausible deniability, internal notes scrubbed from records, reports rewritten to sound neutral. They'd try to erase everything, except now they couldn't, because there were too many witnesses. She heard footsteps behind her. Zara Patel appeared at the end of the corridor, slightly out of breath. She had followed her off the plane, despite being warned not to. Ariana didn't say anything. She just gave Zara a slight nod. "I had to come," Zara said, voice low. "They're trying to bury it. They told me to shut up and get back to my post." "You okay?" Ariana asked. "I don't know," Zara admitted, "but I'd rather be scared for the right reason than quiet for the wrong one." Ariana smiled, just a little. Before she could speak again, one of the ground agents motioned toward a waiting area. "You can sit there while we sort this out." "I'm not waiting," Ariana said. The agent looked up. "Excuse me, I'm not sitting. I'm not hiding in some back room while your airline tries to rewrite what just happened. I'd like to speak to your operations director. Now." The agent hesitated. "Ma'am, we're just following instructions." Ariana pulled out her phone. She scrolled past her recent calls until she landed on one contact, Devin Marcus, her attorney. She hit dial. Zara stepped back, watching her nervously. "Devin," Ariana said the moment the line connected. "I'm at Gate 14 of Atlanta International. Falcon Jet just forcibly removed me from first class and falsely flagged me as a security risk." Devin didn't miss a beat. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Good. Do not move. I'll have press, legal, and 2 senior compliance officers there in under 20 minutes. We'll file with the FAA and Department of Transportation immediately." She nodded. "Also, contact Journal Global. Send them a short brief mention Zara and Eleanor Briggs by name. They'll want the exclusive. You want me to make this public already?" "Yes," Ariana said. "It's time." Zara's eyes widened. "Wait, Journal Global. They're the largest investigative outlet in the country," Ariana explained. "They've been tracking patterns of discrimination in elite travel spaces. They reached out to me months ago, but I didn't have a case strong enough to go on record." Zara let out a shaky breath. "Until now. Until now." Ariana confirmed. She ended the call and looked straight at the agent again. "I'm not the one who needs to be nervous." Just then, a new figure appeared, tall, dark suit, short gray hair. He had the look of someone used to hiding panic behind smiles. His ID badge identified him as Tom Rayner, VP of Flight Operations. "Ms. Cole," he said, voice polite but tight. "I'd like to offer our sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding. The flight has been delayed due to unfortunate communication errors between staff members." Ariana didn't blink. "You're not here to apologize. You're here to contain the damage." Rayner's smile thinned. "We'd like to make this right." "You can't," Ariana said, "but you can try to do better for the people watching. I've been told your ticket was accidentally voided during rebooking procedures." "Don't lie to me," Ariana interrupted. "I have the full manifest. I know who accessed it. I have video, witnesses, timestamped logs." Rayner's mouth opened, then closed again. Zara stepped forward, holding up her own tablet. "I'll confirm it all. I've already emailed myself the internal audit trail." Rayner looked visibly rattled. "I see," he said. "Then perhaps it's best we have legal join us before continuing this conversation." "I agree," Ariana said. "They're on their way." For a few moments, the corridor was silent again. Just Ariana, Zara, the 2 security agents, and the rapidly crumbling confidence of one corporate executive. Then Ariana's phone rang. Unknown number, she answered cautiously. "Ms. Cole." "Yes. This is Celeste Rowland, executive editor at Journal Global. Your attorney just briefed us. We're spinning up a feature now. I need confirmation of a few things." "Go ahead," Ariana said calmly. "You were removed from Falcon Jet Flight 980 without valid cause." "Yes." "You were falsely flagged in the airline's database." "Yes." "And you were accused of theft by another first-class passenger." A pause. "Yes." There was silence on the other end. "Ms. Cole, this is explosive." "I know," she replied. Celeste continued. "We have a freelance journalist, Marcus Ling, arriving at the terminal within 15 minutes. He'll meet you, Zara Patel, and any other willing witness. We're running this front page." Ariana nodded slowly. "Make sure you center the systems, not just the scandal. This isn't about my seat. It's about who they think deserves one." Celeste's voice softened. "We'll do it justice." The call ended. Zara looked at her. "I didn't know you had this much power." "I don't," Ariana said. "I have the truth. Power comes from what you do with it. Behind them, The terminal buzzed with the usual sounds, boarding announcements, suitcase wheels, a child laughing. But within the space around Ariana, something very different was growing. A story, one they wouldn't be able to bury. She stood by the window now, staring out at the grounded Falcon jet aircraft. The jet bridge was still connected. No passengers had boarded again. She could imagine the tense conversations happening behind the closed doors of that plane. She could imagine Michelle pacing, Bryce fuming, Craig wondering if this would end his career, and Ariana. She wasn't wondering anymore. She was preparing. By the time Ariana Cole stepped into the airport lounge, the world had already started watching, not metaphorically, literally. Someone on the plane had uploaded a 58-second video clip of her confrontation with the flight crew. It had been viewed over 300,000 times in under an hour. Hashtags were trending, headlines were forming, and she hadn't even spoken to the press yet. The lounge receptionist had initially hesitated to let her in. But the moment Ariana introduced herself and a phone behind the desk lit up with the word Priority Executive Alert, the entire posture changed. Suddenly, she was being ushered into a private corner, offered refreshments she didn't touch, and surrounded by people speaking in hushed tones. Zara sat beside her, jittery, constantly checking her email as if something inside it might vanish if she didn't stare long enough. "I think I'm going to be fired," she said quietly. "Probably," Ariana answered honestly, but not quietly, and not without witnesses. Zara swallowed. "Are you scared?" Ariana took a long breath. "Yes, but I'm used to fear. Fear is part of the price. I'm more afraid of silence." Their conversation was interrupted when a young man stepped into their space. He wore a windbreaker with a press badge around his neck. Tall, alert, and holding a compact camera. He looked tired but focused. "Marcus Ling," he said, "Journal Global." Ariana stood. "You're early. They bumped me through security when I mentioned your name." He sat, pulling out a small audio recorder. "I'll start with your permission." Ariana nodded. "This is a recorded conversation between Ariana Cole and Marcus Ling for Journal Global. Date July 11th, location ATL International Airport." He leaned in slightly. "Ms. Cole, you were removed from Falcon Jet Flight 980. Tell me why." Ariana's voice was measured. "I was falsely accused of theft, then flagged as a potential threat, and finally removed despite possessing a valid first-class ticket. All of that happened because I didn't fit someone's idea of who belongs in seat 2A, and who accused you of passenger named Bryce Halston, a white male hedge fund partner, and the crew's role they enabled the accusation. They tried to erase my name from the manifest, then justified it with language like protocol and security concern. I have proof." Zara nodded beside her. "I sent logs to 3 emails and backed it up to cloud." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's bold." "I've seen things disappear before," Zara said. "Digital footprints aren't eternal unless you guard them." Marcus turned back to Ariana. "Why do you think this story is different from the others? Why is it resonating?" Ariana looked out the window for a moment. "Because it's not just about race. It's about presence. The audacity of being somewhere you were never expected to occupy and refusing to leave. That makes people uncomfortable. And for the first time, people are watching that discomfort unfold in real time." He let that sit before asking the next. "What do you want from Falcon Jet? Nothing," Ariana said. "They already showed me who they are. I want change from the people who allowed this to happen. The regulators, the silent executives, the partners who look away when it's not profitable to speak. Marcus ended the recording. That was powerful. I've spent a lifetime rehearsing it in my head, Ariana replied. Just then, her phone buzzed. A message from Devin Marcus. We've filed formal discrimination charges, FAA and DOTI complaints submitted. They're assembling crisis counsel on the Falcon Jet side. News just broke nationally. You're officially viral. Ariana closed her eyes for just a second. Not to escape, to prepare. Minutes later, she stood again as a second reporter entered the lounge, this time from a TV network. Cameras, makeup, a wireless mic already clipped to her lapel. Things were escalating faster than expected. Outside the lounge, terminal screens had begun showing news headlines. Black CEO removed from flight sparks. Outrage Falcon Jet under scrutiny for alleged racial profiling. Passengers walking past began whispering, pointing, glancing toward the private room. Ariana's face was starting to appear on screens everywhere. Zara's, too. Even Eleanor's name had surfaced, quoted in one of the earliest Twitter threads that had gone viral. Ariana turned toward Zara. Are you ready for what happens next? I don't know, Zara said, but I know I'd regret it more if I didn't stand up. Ariana placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. That's all. Courage is being terrified and doing it anyway. Suddenly, the lounge door opened again. 2 men in dark suits entered. They had the crisp, neutral look of damage control. One of them, tall with narrow glasses, stepped forward. Ms. Cole, I'm Trevor Lane, lead counsel for Falcon Jet. This is Matt Granger, our VP of Public Relations. We'd like to invite you to a private conference room to discuss resolution. Ariana didn't blink. Resolution. Matt Granger smiled tightly. We believe this was a gross miscommunication, and we're prepared to offer a formal apology, compensation, and assurances of retraining efforts for involved staff. Marcus Ling raised his phone slightly. Can I quote that Trevor Lane tensed? We would prefer these talks be confidential. Zara's voice cut through. So you can erase it like you erased the manifest. The room fell silent. Ariana looked at the 2 men, then at Marcus, then the camera crew now quietly filming through the open lounge door. No, she said firmly. Anything you have to say to me, say it on record, because off record is where injustice hides. Trevor's expression hardened. That's highly irregular. So was what happened on that plane, Ariana replied. But here we are. Matt stepped forward again. Ms. Cole, surely there's a way to resolve this with discretion. Discretion is how this has gone on for decades. I'm done whispering. Zara's hand slipped into Ariana's and gave it the smallest squeeze. Outside, more phones were recording, more eyes were watching. The moment wasn't shrinking. It was expanding. Ariana turned to Marcus. You're still recording. He nodded. Good, she said. Then let the record show I will not settle. I will not be silenced, and I will not be removed from spaces I've rightfully earned. And in that moment, across every screen where her face appeared, something cracked open. Not just a story, a movement. By the time Ariana Cole left the press lounge, her name was on every screen in the terminal. Flight 980 still hadn't taken off, and passengers from other gates had started to gather, some out of curiosity, others out of solidarity. Zara walked beside her, their pace steady. A security officer assigned to escort them tried to stay inconspicuous, but his earpiece and nervous glances gave him away. Ariana ignored it. She had bigger things to focus on now. The airport's executive wing, normally reserved for airline board members or high-ranking government personnel, had been cleared to host a private emergency meeting. Devin Marcus, Ariana's attorney, had arrived moments earlier and was already inside, reviewing legal documents. As Ariana stepped into the sterile glass meeting room, a hush fell over the corporate representatives inside. They all stood when she entered, not out of respect but out of fear. The room was lined with mahogany trim and large digital monitors displaying real-time social media feeds, headlines, and internal memos. The words PR Crisis Level 5 flashed in red on the top right corner of one monitor. Ariana took her seat calmly. Devin slid a folder toward her. "Federal complaint has been filed," he whispered. "So has an EEOC complaint. I also called 3 members of the Transportation Oversight Committee. And they're listening. They've seen the footage. One of them is already drafting a public statement." Across the table sat Trevor Lane, Falcon Jet's legal counsel, flanked by Matt Granger, VP of PR, and a third person Ariana hadn't seen before, a woman in her early 50s, composed and surprisingly calm. Her name tag read Sandra Lemaire, Chief Operating Officer, Falcon Jet. "We appreciate you agreeing to speak with us directly," Sandra began. Her voice was cool, measured, the voice of someone used to spinning chaos into symmetry. "I'm not here for a settlement," Ariana replied. "We understand," Sandra said. "This meeting is not to negotiate hush money. It's to understand what you want and how much more damage can be prevented." Ariana smiled slightly. "That depends on how honest you're willing to be." Trevor cleared his throat. "There's already chatter about this turning into a class action suit. We've begun internal investigation protocols," but Ariana cut in. "Stop. Don't use soft language with me. You tried to erase me. You tried to make me disappear because I didn't fit the narrative of your premium cabin." Matt Granger leaned forward. "With all due respect, Ms. Cole, that's not true. This was a miscommunication, a failure in training, a misunderstanding." Devin raised a hand. "Save it. We have time-stamped access logs showing deliberate changes made to the manifest. The original ticket scan linked to Ms. Cole's passport was manually overridden." Zara, sitting further down, opened her tablet and connected it to the screen. The logs appeared for all to see. "There," she said. "That line. It's when the system auto-assigned Miss Cole to 2A. And 35 minutes later, it was deleted and replaced with Mr. Halston's name, who was never even checked in at that point." Silence. Sandra's expression didn't flicker. "Who had access to the system at that time? Michelle Sanders," Zara said flatly. "She requested my login to double-check the assignments and then told me not to say anything." Matt shifted uncomfortably. "So, what are we looking at here? A rogue flight attendant?" "No," Ariana replied. "You're looking at a culture, one that believes protocol only applies to some people, and when it's challenged, it retaliates." Trevor looked exhausted. "Ms. Cole, you have every right to pursue legal action. We'll cooperate fully, but the board is looking for a way to contain this before shareholder confidence collapses." "Too late," Devin said. "Your stock has dropped 11% since this morning." Sandra remained quiet. Then, finally, she folded her hands. "What do you want?" Ms. Cole. Ariana paused. She looked at Zara, then at Devin, then back at Sandra. I want full public acknowledgement. No corporate speak, no diluted statement. I want you to say, on record, that Falcon Jet discriminated against me. Matt flinched. That's legally dangerous. It's also the truth, Ariana said. Next, I want every staff member involved, Michelle, Craig, Bryce Halston terminated, not quietly reassigned, and I want Zara promoted. She was the only one who told the truth when it cost her something. Zara's mouth fell open. Wait. What Ariana didn't break eye contact with Sandra? And finally, I want a company-wide overhaul of your inclusion policies. I want a third-party watchdog to audit your internal systems for racial profiling patterns, and I want it to be made public. Trevor's pen dropped. Matt rubbed his temples. Sandra didn't move. That's a lot, she said. No, Ariana said quietly. It's the bare minimum. Trevor looked at Sandra. We'll need board approval. Then get it, she replied. Devin leaned toward Ariana. I suggest we give them 48 hours to deliver written commitment to these terms. Otherwise, we move forward with a federal injunction and class action suit. Ariana nodded. Agreed. Sandra stood slowly. Ms. Cole, I'll be honest, this will destroy us. Ariana finally stood too. She looked directly into Sandra's eyes. No, she said, you destroyed yourselves. I just stopped you from hiding it. As Ariana turned to leave, Zara stood with her. The monitors behind them flickered with real-time commentary. Falcon Jet faces corporate reckoning, Zara Patel, whistleblower, praised for courage, Ariana Cole calm, relentless, unyielding. Outside the glass conference room, a crowd had gathered, employees, reporters, some just travelers holding coffee cups, watching history unfold in the hallway. And as Ariana stepped out, the crowd parted not just for her, but for the future she was walking into. The day after the incident, Ariana Cole woke up in her Manhattan apartment to find herself on the front page of every major news outlet in the country. But she didn't turn on the TV. She didn't scroll. She just sat in her kitchen, drinking black coffee in silence, watching the light crawl across the floor like it was writing something slow and permanent. Lena Cruz, her longtime assistant, arrived shortly after 7, Moom, gently pushing open the door with her shoulder and carrying 2 bags, one with legal folders, the other with croissants. I brought the flaky ones, Lena said softly, setting them down. The ones you only eat when you know you did the right thing. Ariana allowed a tired smile. I'm not sure what today is yet. Lena poured herself tea. It's the day you start rewriting policy at 30,000 feet. Ariana chuckled lightly, but her expression was distant. They've agreed to the demands. They sent a draft of the public statement at 5:12 a.m. Devin's reviewing the language. They're offering full admission and termination of the involved employees. Zara's promotion is confirmed, and they've partnered with an external civil rights audit team and the Watchdog Committee. They're still hesitating. Ariana nodded slowly. That's the one that matters most. Lena leaned forward. They know if they refuse, you'll torch them publicly. I won't need to, Ariana said. The truth will finish what they started. Across the city, outside Falcon Jet's headquarters, reporters were already stationed, waiting for the company's noon press conference. Protesters had begun to gather, too. Some held signs, others just stood silently. One boy held up a poster board that read, "My mom works twice as hard for half the respect." Zara Patel was being interviewed on a national morning show. her face both nervous and brave. She spoke not just about the flight, but about the fear she had felt, the pressure to obey, the danger of stepping out of line. "Most of us just want to do our jobs," she said on live television, "but sometimes doing the job right means breaking from the script." Inside Ariana's apartment, the air was still, but the world outside was roaring. Devin Marcus arrived just before 9, hair slightly out of place, dark circles under his eyes. "I've reviewed the Falcon Jet statement. They're trying to water it down. No direct use of the word racism. They want to call it a breakdown in internal systems and bias training gaps." Ariana raised an eyebrow. "Absolutely not. That's what I told them. Do they realize I'm not looking for safe language, I'm looking for transformation?" "They realize it now," Devin said, setting the folder down. "They'll need to choose between short-term damage and long-term survival." Ariana leaned back in her chair, hands folded over her lap. "There's a part of me that wants to burn it all down." Devin met her eyes. "You've already lit the match. Now you choose where to aim the flame." Ariana nodded slowly. "Then we aim it at the roots." By noon. She was in a black car on her way to the press conference. She hadn't planned to attend, but something shifted inside her after watching Zara on the morning broadcast. She couldn't stay silent now, not when people like Zara were taking risks inspired by her presence. The Falcon Jet building was surrounded by people press, employees, community organizers, and curious onlookers. The company had erected a temporary podium outside, flanked by 2 Falcon Jet banners that fluttered like apologies in the wind. Sandra Lemaire took the podium first. She was composed, crisp, and still spoke like every word had passed through 3 lawyers before leaving her lips. "Today, Falcon Jet acknowledges a grave and unacceptable failure in its standards, training, and judgment," she began. Ms. Ariana Cole was wrongfully removed from her seat, profiled based on assumptions that contradict everything we claim to stand for. For that, we offer not just an apology, but a commitment. She listed the immediate action: staff terminations, policy audits, compensation, and the introduction of a new division focused on anti-discrimination enforcement. But the crowd didn't fully exhale until Ariana stepped forward. No script, no notes, just a woman with a quiet fire and the weight of too many similar stories behind her. She looked out at the crowd and paused for a long moment. "I didn't expect to be here," she began, "because I didn't expect them to let me speak." There was a murmur, then silence. "I was told growing up that if I worked hard enough, if I dressed right, if I spoke clearly, I would belong. But the truth is, for people like me, there is no amount of excellence that exempts us from suspicion." She let that hang. "And yet I do not hate the people who wronged me. I don't need to. The system that taught them to fear me is what I want dismantled." The cameras clicked rapidly. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for reckoning." So the next time a little black girl sees a first-class seat, she doesn't wonder if it's for her. She just sits. Applause rose, first scattered, then full. Ariana stepped down without fanfare. Zara joined her a moment later, teary-eyed and trembling. "I'm still scared," she whispered. "That means you're doing something important," Ariana said. That evening, Ariana returned home to hundreds of messages. Some were from CEOs, some from flight attendants, some from strangers who simply wrote, "Thank you for not leaving quietly." She read every single one, Not because she needed validation, but because they reminded her that the seat she had been removed from had become something far greater than leather and status. It had become a symbol, a space reclaimed, a line in the sand, and, though she was exhausted, Ariana sat down at her desk, pulled out a legal pad, and began writing. Not a lawsuit, a plan, because the airline might have collapsed in public perception. But now came the real work, changing the altitude of justice for everyone. 2 weeks later, Ariana Cole stood beneath a muted sky in Washington, D.C., in front of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The hearing chamber was packed. A wall of cameras lined the back wall. News anchors whispered updates into microphones. Congressional aides shuffled stacks of paper. Members of Congress sat poised behind microphones, their expressions unreadable. Zara Patel sat behind Ariana, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Devin Marcus sat beside her, meticulously organizing documents. Lena Cruz was off to the side, quietly recording everything on her phone. They weren't just a team anymore. They were witnesses to something larger than one incident. Ariana adjusted the microphone. "My name is Ariana Cole," she began, voice steady, "and I was wrongfully removed from Falcon Jet Flight 980, not because I broke any law, not because I was unruly, and not because of any credible threat. I was removed because I exist in a body that still, in the year 2025, makes some people uncomfortable in positions of power, wealth, or visibility." There was no dramatization in her tone, only clarity. "I am not here today because of what one airline did to me. I am here because of what that moment revealed about the systems that allowed it. I'm here for every person who didn't record it, who didn't have witnesses, and who didn't get justice." One of the congresswomen, a black woman in a sharp navy blazer, nodded solemnly. Ariana continued, "The problem isn't limited to Falcon Jet. It is across the industry, in corporate culture, in biased flagging systems, in employee discretion that is seldom questioned when it's weaponized against someone like me." She paused, letting the words settle. "I have submitted recommendations, policy audits, mandatory bias retraining, anonymous reporting channels for crew, and federal oversight on flight removals. This isn't just about comfort in the skies. It's about dignity on the ground." The chairman leaned in. "Ms. Cole, are you seeking new legislation? I'm seeking accountability." Ariana answered, "And if it requires law, so be it." The audience murmured in quiet agreement. The chairman nodded slowly. "Thank you for your courage." Ariana stepped down from the podium, her steps measured. The hearing was a formality in some ways, but it was also a message. The airline industry would now think twice before acting from bias and hiding behind policy. Afterward, as they exited into the sunlight outside the Capitol building, Zara turned to Ariana with a hesitant smile. "I didn't think we'd get here." "I didn't either," Ariana replied. "But sometimes change doesn't ask for your confidence. It just needs your consistency." They walked in silence for a few minutes before Lena caught up with them, holding her phone up. "You need to see this." She opened a news article, "Falcon Jet CEO resigns following congressional hearing." Ariana blinked. "Sandra, no." Lena said, "The CEO, Martin Kelson, he issued a statement. The culture of leadership must reflect the passengers we serve. We failed to do that, and for that, I stepped down." Ariana read the headline again, this time slower. Not because she needed time to understand it, but because it reminded her just how far things had shifted. Later that evening, Ariana was invited to appear on the national program Voices of America. The host introduced her with reverence. Tonight, we speak with Ariana Cole, business leader, humanitarian, and the woman whose quiet refusal to leave a seat sparked a reckoning. Ariana looked directly into the camera. I didn't expect to become a symbol. I just wanted to get home. But you became one. She nodded. Sometimes the world chooses you. What do you hope people take from all this? Ariana thought for a long moment. That justice isn't something loud. It's something persistent. You don't always need to scream to shake the room. Sometimes you just need to stay seated. By the next morning, Falcon Jet had unveiled an official new passenger equity charter, designed in collaboration with civil rights organizations. Other airlines quietly began reviewing their internal protocols, too. Zara Patel had been promoted to Director of Cabin Training and Inclusion, a brand new position. She released a public statement crediting Ariana as the reason she found her voice, and Ariana. She returned to her life, slowly. Not as before, but with a deeper stillness. She started speaking at colleges, mentoring young professionals, and consulting with travel equity boards. She never again took a first-class seat without remembering what it meant, what it could mean for someone watching, and every now and then, she'd receive a handwritten letter from a passenger who had once felt invisible. One, from a teenager named Camille, read, "Dear Ms. Cole, I saw what they did to you, and I saw what you did back. My mom said you reminded her of Rosa Parks, but I think you're like no one else. You made me believe I'm allowed to take up space, even when it makes other people nervous, especially then. Love." Camille, Ariana folded the letter carefully and placed it inside her journal. Not for memory, but for momentum. That was the lesson. Seats come and go, but standing for something that travels farther than any plane ever could sometimes. The most powerful stand is the one taken while sitting down. Ariana Cole didn't raise her voice. She didn't fight. She simply refused to disappear. And in that silence, millions heard her. From a humiliating injustice aboard a flight to national hearings and policy reforms, Ariana's story reminds us of one simple truth. Dignity is not granted by wealth, status, or approval. It is inherent. And when it's denied, the world must answer for it. But this wasn't just about her. It was about every Zara who was too afraid to speak, every passenger who was told they were too much or out of place, every quiet moment of discrimination that never made the news. This story is a call to awareness, a demand for accountability, and a reminder that injustice thrives in silence until someone decides not to sit quietly anymore. If Ariana's story touched your heart, stirred your mind, or opened your eyes, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter and stories that make a difference. Until next time, stay kind, stay aware, and never be afraid to take your rightful seat.